नमस्ते, हमेशा खुश रहो बेटिया। आई एम JVN Dr. Meenakshi, Assistant Professor in Department of Shalakya Chandra, Faculty of Ayurvedic Science, Jyoti Vidyapeeth, Women's University. Today we will discuss the anatomy of eyelid under part 1. There is a gross anatomy of eyelid. The eyelids are the mobile tissue curtains placed in front of the eyeballs. These act as shutters, protecting the eyes from injuries and excessive light. These also perform an important function of spreading the tear film over the cornea and conjunctiva, and also help in drainage of tears by lacrimal pump system. Then the parts of eyelid. Eyelid is divided by horizontal furrow or sulcus into an orbit and tarsal part. So here's an image of the eyelid where you can see the upper palpebral furrow, which have divided the eyelid into two parts, the orbital portion and the tarsal portion. And just like that, there's the lower palpebral furrow. Then the position of lids. When the eye is open, the upper lid covers about 1/6 of the cornea and the lower lid just touches the limbus. Then canthi. What is canthi? The two lids meet each other at medial and lateral angles, which are known as the outer canthi and the inner canthi. The medial canthus is about 2 millimeter higher than the lateral canthus. Then what is the palpebral aperture? It is the elliptical space between the upper and the lower lid. When the eyes are open, it measures about 10 to 11 millimeter vertically in the center and about 28 to 30 millimeter horizontally. Then we comes to the lid margin. It is about 2 millimeter broad and is divided into two parts by the punctum. The medial lacrimal portion is rounded and it is devoid of lashes or glands. The lateral is called the ciliary portion and it consists of a rounded anterior border, a sharp posterior border, and an intermarginal strip between the two borders. Two borders means the anterior border and posterior border. In between the two borders, there is an intermarginal strip. And there is a gray line which marks the junction of skin and conjunctiva. It divides the intermarginal strip into an anterior strip bearing 2 to 3 rows of lashes and a posterior strip on which openings of meibomian glands are arranged in a row. The splitting of the eyelids when required in operations is done at the level of the gray line. So you understood what is the gray line? Then next is the structure. Each eyelid is consists of various layers. So we study these layers from anterior to posterior. The first structure in the eyelid is the skin. The skin of eyelid is elastic, having a fine texture, and is the thinnest in the body. Then next layer below the skin in the eyelid is the subcutaneous areolar tissue. This subcutaneous areolar tissue is very loose and contains no fat. It is thus readily distended by edema or blood. Then the next structure we'll discuss. Here's an image in which they have shown the structure of upper eyelid. In the lower side, there is the opening of meibomian gland, and at the root of hair follicle there is Zeiss gland, and there is sweat gland, marginal arcade, meibomian gland in the tarsal plate. gland of Wolfram, peripheral arcade, Mueller's muscle, levator, gland of Cross, fat, septum orbicularis, orbicularis oculi muscle. Then the third layer in the eyelid is the layer of striated muscle. It consists of orbicularis muscle which forms an oval sheet across the eyelids. It comprises three portions: the orbital portion, the palpebral portion, and the lacrimal portion. It closes the eyelids and is supplied by a zygomatic branch of the facial nerve. Therefore, in the paralysis of facial nerve, there occurs lagophthalmos, which may be complicated by exposure keratitis. What is lagophthalmos? It is the inability to close the eyelids, and thus in the eyelid there is a striated muscle present called the orbicularis oculi, which is supplied by the facial nerve branch. So in case of facial paralysis, then patient suffer from the lagophthalmos. Patient is not able to close the eyelids, and when he is not able to close the eyelids due to exposure, there will be the inflammation of cornea. In addition, the upper lid also contains the levator palpebrae superioris muscle. It is called the LPS muscle. It arises from the apex of the orbit and is inserted by three parts on the skin of lid, anterior surface of the tarsal plate, and conjunctiva of superior fornix. It raises the upper lid and it is supplied by a branch of oculomotor nerve. Then the fourth layer in the eyelid is the submuscular areolar tissue. It is a layer of loose connective tissue, and the nerves and vessels, these lie in this layer. Therefore, to anesthetize lids, injection is given in this plane of submuscular areolar tissue, which is supplied by the nerves. It is anesthetized by the injection. Then the next layer in the eyelid is fibrous layer. It is the framework of the lids and consists of two parts: the central tarsal part and the peripheral septum orbital. I will show that in the image. The tarsal plate. These are two plates of dense connective tissue, one for each lid. Means in each lid we have a plate of connective tissue which gives shape and firmness to the lids. This is a function of tarsal plate. It is present to shape and provide firmness to the lids. The upper and lower tarsal plate join with each other at medial and lateral canthus. These two plates will join at the two canthi and are attached to the orbital margins through medial and lateral palpebral ligaments. In the substance of the lateral plates lie the meibomian glands in the parallel rows. Therefore, the meibomian glands are called the tarsal glands because they are present in the tarsal plates. Then in this image they have shown the tarsal plate and the septum orbital. Okay, the inferior tarsus, superior tarsus, and on the both sides they have shown the lateral palpebral ligament and the medial palpebral ligament. So next part is the septum orbital, which is also called the palpebral fascia. It is a thin membrane of connective tissue attached centrally to the tarsal plates and peripherally to the periosteum of the orbital margin. It is perforated by nerves, vessels, and a muscle called the levator palpebrae superioris, which enter the lids from the orbit. Then comes the sixth layer. The sixth layer of non-striated muscle fibers. It consists of the palpebral muscle of Mueller, which lies deep to the septum orbital in both the lids. In the upper lid, it arises from the fibers of LPS muscle, and in the lower lid from prolongation of the inferior rectus muscle, and is inserted on the peripheral margins of the tarsal plate, and it is supplied by the sympathetic fibers. Then the last layer of the eyelid is the conjunctiva. The part which lines the lids is called the palpebral conjunctiva, and it consists of three parts as we have discussed in the conjunctiva: marginal, tarsal, and orbital. So here completes the layers of the eyelids. So here our session completes with this slide. This session is powered by digital version 2.0 Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. I hope you are satisfied with my digital session. If you have any query, please mention in the comment box. I will resolve it. Thank you so much.
Which is the one third of the total refractive power of the eye. It is a 3/4 of the total refractive power of eye. That is, the total refractive power of eye is 60 diopter, and that of cornea is 45 diopter. Then the histology, there are 6 layers: anterior epithelium, Bowman's membrane, central stroma, Dua's layer, Descemet's membrane, endothelium. You can see in this image the epithelium, Bowman's layer, stroma, Dua's layer, Descemet's layer, and endothelium. First, the epithelium. The cornea epithelium is stratified, squamous, and non-keratinized. It is continuous with conjunctival epithelium at limbus, but having no goblet cells. Thickness is 50 to 90 micrometer, consists of 5 or 6 layers of nucleated cells resting on a basal lamina, namely the basal cells, wing cells, and the surface cells. The basal lamina is secreted by the basal cells. It is 0.1 to 1 micrometer wide. Ultrastructurally, it is distinguished in two parts: lamina lucida and lamina densa. Lamina lucida is superficial, lamina densa is deep osmophilic. Then epithelial turnover. The early study suggested that the epithelium replaced approximately weekly by division of basal cells and the older shell from the surface. It is now recognized that the germinative region lies at the limbus. The stem cells and the cells migrate at a very slow rate to the center of cornea, which may be as long as the ear. Second layer, the Bowman's membrane. It binds the corneal stroma anteriorly with basement membrane of epithelium. It is not a true elastic membrane. Once destroyed, does not regenerate. Shows considerable resistance to infection and injury. Third layer is the stroma, which is 0.5 mm thick. The stroma or substantia propria occupies about 90% of the total corneal thickness, composed of corneal collagen fibrils, keratocytes, and extracellular ground substances. The lamellae are arranged in many layers, 200 to 250, and are parallel to each other. The anterior one-third stroma has a lamella are thin, and in the posterior two-third of the stroma, the lamellae are larger. Next layer is the Dua's layer, which was discovered by Dr. Harminder Singh Dua at the University of Nottingham in 2013. It is the fourth layer, which is 15 microns thick. It is a strong layer and impervious to air. The fifth layer is the Descemet's membrane. It is a strong homogeneous layer. It is a basement membrane of endothelium made up of the collagen and glycoproteins. It is elastic. It can regenerate. It has a resistance to chemical agents, infection, and pathological processes. The peripheral rim of Descemet's membrane is the internal landmark of the corneal limbus, and also it is the anterior limit of the trabecular measure, which is called the Schwalbe's line. Then the last layer is the endothelium. Corneal endothelium is a simple squamous epithelium. Endothelial cells are hexagonal, which forms a continuous mosaic pattern, best seen in specular microscopy. Cell density at birth is 6,000 cells per micrometer square, and in young adults 2,500 to 3,000 cells per square millimeter. The endothelial cells cannot divide or replicate. With aging, the cell density of the endothelium decreases, which is compensated by an increase in the cell size or shape. As these endothelial cells are involved in corneal hydration, they help in maintenance of corneal transparency. The blood supply of cornea. The cornea is a vascular structure. Small loops derived from the anterior ciliary vessels invade its periphery for about 1 mm. Actually, these loops are not in cornea, but in the subconjunctival tissue which overlaps the cornea. Then the nerve supply of the cornea. Cornea is supplied by the anterior ciliary nerves, which are branches of the ophthalmic division of fifth cranial nerve. After going about 2 mm in cornea, the nerve loses their myelin sheath and divide dichotomously and forms three plexus: stromal plexus, subepithelial plexus, and the intraepithelial plexus. Then the applied physiology of cornea. Primary physiological functions of the cornea are to act as a major refractive medium and to protect the intraocular contents. Then the last point is corneal transparency. It is a result of peculiar arrangement of corneal lamellae, peculiar refractive index of corneal lamellae, vascularity of the cornea, relative state of dehydration, swelling pressure of stroma counters the imbibition effect of IOP, and corneal crystallines, water-soluble proteins of the keratocytes. Thank you so much. This session is powered by Digital Version 2.0, Jyoti Vidyapeeth Women's University. I hope you are satisfied with my digital session. If you have any query, please write in the comment box. I will resolve it. Thank